The crimson warning lights bathed my command console in hellish red as the hyperspace tunnel collapsed behind me. My ship's hull groaned under the sudden deceleration, and I felt that familiar knot of anticipation twist in my stomach. After 3 months of traveling through the void, I had finally reached the backwater system, the empire called Sol 3. Earth, the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star, spinning lazily in the cosmic darkness like a bruised marble. From this distance, it looked exactly as our intelligence reports had described, a dying world wrapped in toxic clouds, continents scarred by endless warfare, oceans poisoned by industrial waste, the perfect target for our expansion fleet. But as I engaged my ship's advanced scanning array, something made my warrior's instincts scream in alarm. The energy readings were all wrong, completely impossibly wrong. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and sense someone watching you? That's exactly what happened when my sensors swept across Earth's major population centers. The quantum readings didn't just seem unusual, they actively pushed back against my equipment. It's like trying to scan through solid lead. My hands trembled as I adjusted the scanner's frequency. These humans were supposed to be primitives, barely capable of splitting atoms. Yet the energy signatures radiating from their cities registered higher than our own capital world, higher than anything in our databases. Impossible, I whispered to the empty cockpit. But the readings didn't lie. I decided to focus on a smaller target first. Their military installations would give me the intelligence I needed about their defensive capabilities. The humans had a facility they called Area 51 in their desert region, supposedly their most advanced research center. When I trained my quantum scanners on the base, something that had never happened in my 15 years of reconnaissance occurred. My equipment didn't just malfunction. It died. Completely dead for 3 full minutes. 3 minutes might not sound like much, but in space combat, 3 seconds can mean the difference between victory and vaporization. My ship's sensors had never failed before. They were designed to penetrate the densest matter, scan through dimensional barriers, even peek inside black holes. But somehow, this primitive military base had technology that could shut down systems built by the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. The fear started then. It's not the healthy caution of a professional scout, but something deeper. Something primal that whispered, I was no longer the predator in this scenario. I needed to get closer, much closer. Activating my ship's stealth field, I descended through Earth's atmosphere toward one of their major cities. The cloaking technology was perfect. It bent light, sound, and energy around my vessel. It's making it completely invisible to any known detection system. That's when I saw Jake. Through my high-powered scope, I watched this human male working alone in what appeared to be a government building. Late-night fluorescent lights flickering, the scene looked mundane enough. Just another bureaucrat putting in overtime. But then Jake casually reached over and lifted a steel support beam that had fallen from some construction work. With one hand, like it weighed nothing. Now, I've seen strong beings before. Our own warriors can lift impressive weights, but this beam had to weigh at least 2 tons. Jake moved it like a piece of cardboard, repositioning it with the care you'd use to arrange flowers. But here's where it gets really interesting. The moment footsteps echoed in the hallway, Jake's entire demeanor changed. He picked up a coffee cup and suddenly seemed to struggle with its weight, grimacing as if the ceramic mug contained liquid mercury. His colleague Mason walked in, and Jake immediately started complaining about his sore back and how heavy his briefcase felt. The performance was flawless, Academy Award worthy. If I hadn't just watched him casually relocate a steel beam, I would have believed he was exactly what he appeared to be, a tired office worker dealing with the minor aches of middle age. The deception was so smooth, so practiced, that it sent ice through my veins. How many times had Jake performed this routine? How many humans were walking around with the strength of industrial machinery while pretending to be fragile? But the moment that truly shattered my understanding of reality came next. Jake finished his conversation with Mason and walked over to the window. He looked up at the night sky, and his eyes found my ship. Not the general area where I might be hiding. Not a lucky guess at my location. He looked directly at me. Through the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy, through layers of light-bending fields that had fooled entire fleets. Jake saw me as clearly as if I were standing in front of him. And then he smiled. Not a threatening smile. Not the grin of a predator who had found prey. It was warm, friendly almost. Welcoming. Like he was greeting an old friend who had finally come to visit. Then Jake did something that made my blood freeze in my veins. He waved. A casual, cheerful wave, the kind you'd give to a neighbor across the street. My hands flew to my scanner controls, double-checking my stealth field integrity.
All systems showed green.
Perfect invisibility maintained. Yet this human was waving at me like I was visible to the naked eye. That's when the real fear hit me. Not the fear of discovery. Any scout expects that risk. This was the fear of realizing you've completely misunderstood the situation. The fear of discovering that everything you thought you knew about the universe was wrong. What if we weren't the hunters in this scenario? What if we had never been the hunters? What if Earth's apparent weakness was the most sophisticated camouflage ever devised? As I stared down at Jake's friendly wave, one terrifying question echoed. Through my mind, if the humans had been watching us long enough to perfect this deception, what else did they know about the Empire's plans? The answer to that question would change everything I thought I knew about power, strength, and what it truly means to be advanced. But that's a story for another time. Speaking of power and how small actions can lead to massive changes over time, you'll want to check out my next video about the incredible power of compounding. How tiny. Consistent efforts can create results that seem impossible. Just like Jake's quiet strength, sometimes the most powerful forces are the ones you never see coming. 31 days of surveillance had passed, and I was beginning to understand a terrifying truth. The humans weren't just hiding their capabilities. They were orchestrating the greatest deception in galactic history. My ship hung in orbit like a silent witness to madness. Every day brought new evidence that everything the Empire believed about Earth was deliberately crafted fiction. These weren't primitive beings struggling with basic technology. They were master manipulators running a psychological operation so sophisticated that entire civilizations had fallen for it. The first clue came from their global communication networks, something they called the Internet. On the surface, it looked exactly like what you'd expect from a developing species. Endless streams of small furry animals doing amusing things. Heated debates about which combination of bread and filling made the best meal. And millions of humans sharing pictures of their food before eating it. I actually laughed the first time I saw a video of a human arguing passionately about whether a hot dog was technically a sandwich. These were supposed to be the beings our empire feared. They couldn't even agree on basic food classifications. Then my linguistic algorithms detected something that made my laughter die in my throat. Hidden within those seemingly innocent cat videos were data packets containing mathematical equations that shouldn't exist. Not just advanced mathematics equations that predated known civilization by millions of years. The formulas were embedded in the video compression algorithms, tucked away in the metadata of seemingly random photos, woven into the very fabric of their primitive communication system. I spent 3 sleepless days trying to decode just one of these equations. When I finally cracked it, the answer nearly made me vomit in my command chair. It was a complete blueprint for dimensional folding technologies, something our most brilliant scientists had been working on for centuries without success. And the humans were using it to share videos of dancing babies. The level of technological advancement required to casually embed universe-altering physics into entertainment media was beyond anything in our databases. But they weren't just hiding their science, they were flaunting it, right in front of anyone smart enough to look, which led me to a chilling realization: how many other species had looked. How many scouts before me had detected these same anomalies? What had happened to them? The answer came the next day. During what I initially thought was a routine traffic accident. I was conducting aerial surveillance of one of their major cities when chaos erupted on the street below. A massive transport vehicle, what humans call a truck, had lost control on a steep hill. The driver was unconscious. The vehicle was accelerating directly toward a group of small humans playing in a designated recreational area. The impact was inevitable. Physics doesn't lie. The vehicle weighed approximately 8 tons, traveling at increasing velocity down a 40-degree incline. The children had perhaps 2 seconds before catastrophe. That's when Katie appeared. I don't mean she ran into the scene. I mean she literally appeared, moving so fast that my high-speed cameras could barely track her movement. One moment she was walking normally down the sidewalk. The next she was positioned between the vehicle and the children. In 0.3 seconds, less time than it takes most beings to even recognize danger, Katie had assessed the situation, calculated the physics, and executed a solution that defied everything I understood about biological limitations. She caught the truck, mid-air, with her bare hands. But here's what made my warrior's blood freeze. She didn't just stop it. She gently guided it to a safe landing like a parent catching a falling child. The precision was impossible. The strength was incomprehensible. The speed was supernatural. And then came the performance that proved these humans were operating on a level of sophistication that made our empire look like primitive savages. The moment emergency responders arrived, Katie transformed. She collapsed to the ground, simulating injury and shock with academy-level precision. She controlled her breathing, dilated her pupils, even regulated her heart rate to match someone in traumatic stress. The medical teams rushed to help her, completely convinced she was a victim rather than a superhuman who had just performed a miracle. Katie played her role perfectly confused, shaken, grateful to be alive. But I had been watching her vital signs through my bioscanners. She wasn't even breathing hard. Her heart rate was completely normal. She was about as stressed as someone who had just finished a leisurely walk. The deception was flawless. It was practiced and absolutely terrifying. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the following weeks, I documented dozens of similar events. Humans displaying impossible abilities and immediately reverting to their primitive personas the moment others appeared. But the real revelation came when I started monitoring their military operations. Their Air Force was conducting what they called training exercises, routine maneuvers designed to maintain pilot readiness. On the surface, everything looked appropriately primitive. Their aircraft appeared to use combustion engines. Their pilots seemed limited by basic physics. Their capabilities looked decades behind our own technology. Then, I detected the energy signatures hidden beneath their primitive aircraft, space-time distortion fields, gravity manipulation systems, propulsion technology that could fold reality itself. These weren't training exercises. They were demonstrations of power so advanced that our Empire's finest ships would look like toys by comparison. I watched a human pilot named Ryan execute maneuvers that should have been impossible. He flew patterns that defied gravity, performed turns that violated physics, maintained speeds that would liquefy most known species. Yet when Ryan landed and removed his helmet, he was chatting casually with his colleagues about weekend plans and complaining about the weather. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Here was a being who had just demonstrated mastery over the fundamental forces of the universe, and he was worried about whether it might rain during his family barbecue. The emotional impact hit me in waves. First came the excitement. I had discovered something unprecedented in galactic history. Then came the fear. What did this mean for the Empire? And finally, the anger. How long had they been laughing at us? Every report I had filed, every assessment of human capabilities, every strategic recommendation, all of it was based on deliberate misinformation. We weren't studying a primitive species. We were being studied by masters of deception who had turned camouflage into an art form. But the question that kept me awake during the ship's night cycle was the most terrifying of all. If the humans were this advanced, why were they pretending to be weak? What were they preparing for? And more importantly, what did they know about the Empire's plans that we didn't know they knew? The answer would come sooner than I expected. It would change everything about how I understood power, strategy, and what it truly means to be strong, just like those hidden equations in the cat videos. Sometimes the most powerful forces are the ones hiding in plain sight. Speaking of hidden power, you'll want to check out my next video about the incredible force of compounding, how small consistent actions can create results that seem impossible, just like how Katie's quiet strength had been growing unseen for who knows how long. Day 47, of what I had believed was a covert reconnaissance mission became the day I realized I was the one being watched. The day the hunters became the hunted, and everything I thought I knew about power dynamics in the galaxy crumbled like ancient stone. It started with what should have been routine monitoring of their broadcast transmissions. I was analyzing there. Entertainment programming, something called a comedy show where humans gathered to laugh at scripted scenarios. Standard cultural intelligence gathering, the kind of work that had made my career. But as I filtered through the audio frequencies, my translation algorithms detected something that made my 3 hearts skip beats in sequence. Buried beneath the laughter track, hidden in the very sound waves of human amusement, was a conversation in ancient Kytherian. Now, let me put this in perspective for you. Kytherian was the first language of the galaxy's most advanced prehistoric civilization. It died out approximately 12 million years ago, when Earth's star was still forming from cosmic dust. The language was so complex that only our most elite xenolinguists could even pronounce basic words, yet there it was. Woven into a human comedy show like a secret message between old friends, the transmission was crystal clear once I isolated. A human identified as David, was speaking to someone off-screen. The scout seemed stressed. Should we end this charade? The words hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just aware of my presence, they were monitoring my stress levels. They knew I was struggling with what I was discovering, and they were debating whether to stop pretending. My anger exploded like a supernova. How dare these supposed primitives mock the Galactic Empire? Here I was, a decorated scout commander with 15 years of successful missions, and they were treating me like some amateur stumbling through their backyard. But you know what's worse than being mocked? Realizing you deserve it, because as my rage burned through me, the fear crept back in, stronger than ever. These humans weren't just advanced, they were so far beyond us that they could casually use extinct galactic languages while pretending. To be entertained by simple jokes, the implications were staggering. If they knew Kytherian, what else did they know? How deep did their knowledge go? The most terrifying of all, how long had they been watching us? I was still processing this revelation when my proximity alarm started screaming. Something was approaching my position, fast. My tactical display showed what appeared to be a human. Research satellite, one of their primitive orbital platforms used for basic scientific observation. Nothing threatening about it. Routine space debris, really. Except this satellite was matching my exact orbital pattern. When I adjusted my position to maintain surveillance coverage, it moved with me. When I stopped, it stopped. When I performed a complex evasive maneuver that should have been impossible for any known tracking system to follow, it mirrored my movements perfectly. This wasn't coincidence. This was active stalking by technology that shouldn't exist. Then came the transmission that shattered the last of my professional composure. The signal came through on a frequency that was theoretically impossible. Our scientists had proven that. This particular wavelength couldn't carry information through space. It was like trying to send a message through solid rock, but there it was, clear as a bell in perfect galactic standard. Hey there, friend. You know you're watching. Wanna come down for dinner? My wife Lisa makes amazing pasta. The voice belonged to someone named Marcus, and he was speaking with the casual friendliness of a neighbor inviting you over for a barbecue. No threat, no demand, just a simple invitation delivered through impossible technology. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Here was a being who had just demonstrated mastery over physics itself, and he was talking about pasta, his wife's cooking, like we were old friends who happened to bump into each other at the grocery store. But the casual tone made it even more terrifying. This wasn't a show of force, it was a gentle reminder that they could do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. I tried to jam their communications, standard procedure when dealing with hostile contact. I activated every electronic warfare system in my ship's arsenal, quantum scramblers, frequency disruptors, even an experimental consciousness-based blocking device. Every single system failed. Not malfunctioned, failed. Like they were toys being politely turned off by an adult who didn't want to hurt the child playing with them. Their technology wasn't just advanced, was so far beyond anything in our databases that my equipment couldn't even comprehend what it was trying to fight. It was like bringing a wooden club to a battle against gods. The urgency hit me like a plasma bolt to the chest. I needed to warn the fleet. The Empire was planning a full-scale invasion of Earth, convinced we were dealing with primitives who could barely leave their own planet. But what do you tell a military command that's spent decades planning to conquer what they believe is a helpless target? How do you explain that the primitives are actually the most advanced civilization in galactic history? How do you report that we're not the apex predators we thought we were, that these primitive humans have been playing with us like children with toy soldiers? The psychological impact was devastating. Everything I had believed about the Empire's strength, about our place in the cosmic hierarchy, about the nature of power itself, of it was built on a foundation of lies. But were they our lies, or the humans' lies? Had we deceived ourselves about our superiority, or had the humans deceived us about their primitiveness? The answer was both and neither. The humans hadn't lied to us. They had simply allowed us to see what we expected to see. They had held up a mirror to our arrogance and let us convince ourselves we were looking at weakness. And now, as I sat in my ship surrounded by technology that had just been casually dismissed by a being who wanted to share his wife's pasta recipe, I realized the most terrifying truth of all. If the humans were this advanced and they were still pretending to be primitive, then they were either preparing for something unimaginable or they were protecting something even more precious than power itself. The question wasn't what they were hiding. The question was what they were protecting us from. And that answer would change everything about how I understood strength, wisdom, and what it truly means to be powerful. Just like Marcus's gentle invitation disguised earth-shattering technological superiority, sometimes the most profound changes come from the smallest, most consistent actions. Speaking of small actions with massive impact, want to check out my next video about the incredible power of compounding, how tiny daily choices can create results that seem impossible, just like how the humans had been quietly building something extraordinary while the galaxy wasn't paying attention. Day 52 began like any other surveillance mission, but ended with the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about reality itself. The day I learned that sometimes the most profound revelations come from the most unexpected sources. I was conducting what I believed was covert observation of a human recreational area, what they call a park. Standard intelligence gathering about their social behaviors, looking for weaknesses we could exploit during the inevitable invasion. My ship hung invisible in the afternoon sky, cloaked by technology that had fooled entire galactic civilizations. That's when I saw him. Robert appeared to be exactly what our intelligence file said humans were supposed to be: elderly, frail, moving slowly through the park with small bags of what looked like primitive food pellets. He was feeding tiny flying creatures that gathered around him in cheerful chaos. The scene was almost laughably mundane. Here I was, a warrior scout from the most advanced military in the galaxy, watching an old man scatter breadcrumbs for birds. It was like using a star destroyer to monitor an ant colony. But then Robert did something that made my blood freeze in my veins. He stopped feeding the birds, looked directly up at my cloaked position, and spoke in a voice that carried impossible. "Clearly across the distance, you must be tired, son. Come down, let's talk. Now I want you to understand what just happened here." This human had somehow detected my presence through stealth technology that could fool quantum sensors. He had pinpointed my exact location in three-dimensional space, and he was inviting me down like I was a neighbor dropping by for a casual chat. Every instinct I possessed screamed danger. This was clearly a trap. Military protocol demanded immediate evasion and retreat. I should have engaged emergency protocols and fled to hyperspace. But something in Robert's voice stopped me cold. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't commanding. It was ... paternal. Like a wise grandfather calling a troubled child inside for dinner. There was warmth there and patience. And something else I couldn't identify at first. Understanding. As if he knew exactly what I was going through. Against every rule of military engagement, I found myself descending through the atmosphere. My rational mind kept screaming warnings, but something deeper was pulling me down. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was exhaustion from weeks of cognitive dissonance. Or maybe it was simply the recognition that running was pointless when dealing with beings who had already proven they could track me anywhere. Robert waited patiently as I landed in a secluded area of the park. When I emerged from my ship, he was standing there with his hands empty, that same gentle smile on his weathered face. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks," he said, studying me with eyes that seemed to see right through my military conditioning. "Come on, let's get you something to eat." He led me to what appeared to be a modest human dwelling, simple, decorated with what looked like primitive artwork and family photographs. Everything about it screamed harmless, elderly human, living a quiet retirement. But the moment I stepped inside, my scanner implants went haywire. The walls were lined with technology that made our dreadnoughts look like stone tools. Energy fields hummed with power that shouldn't exist. Computing systems processed information at speeds that violated known physics. And tucked away in corners, almost casually, were devices that could probably reshape reality itself. Yet Robert moved through this impossible space like it was perfectly normal, puttering around what he called his kitchen with the unhurried calm of someone making tea. "I'm retired," he explained, noticing my stunned expression. "Used to be a teacher. High school physics mostly, though I did some consulting work on the side." He chuckled as he prepared food that smelled impossibly familiar. Nothing too exciting, just helping young minds understand how the universe works. The food he served me contained flavors I recognized from my homeworld. Spices that grew only in the crystal gardens of Vexstar and Prime. Proteins that came from creatures that lived in our system's outer moon colonies. This should have been impossible. Earth was supposed to be an isolated system. So these humans weren't supposed to know other worlds existed, let alone have detailed knowledge of our cuisine. But there I was, eating a meal that tasted like childhood memories, served by an elderly human who claimed to be a retired teacher. "We've been watching you watch us," Robert said calmly, settling into a chair that probably cost more than my ship. "You're the 19th scout this decade. The others all filed similar reports about our suspicious behavior." The words hit me like a physical blow. 19 scouts. This decade alone. "What happened to the others?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Oh, they're fine," Robert said with a wave of his hand. "Most of them went home with much more accurate reports about human capabilities. A few decided to stay. We have excellent benefits and the coffee is really quite good." He paused, studying my expression with those impossibly knowing eyes. "You're wondering if this is some kind of recruitment pitch," he continued. "It's not. We're not trying to flip you or extract information. We're just tired of playing this game." "What game?" I managed to ask. Robert smiled sadly. "The game where everyone thinks they're secretly watching Earth, when we've been openly watching all of you for centuries." He waved his hand, and suddenly the room filled with three-dimensional holographic displays. Scout ships from dozens of species, all convinced they were conducting covert surveillance of Earth. All certain they had discovered humanity's hidden capabilities. The Xerithian Empire had sent 12 scouts in the past year. The Quantum Collective had maintained a permanent observation post in our outer system. Crystalline Hegemony had been monitoring our communications for decades, and every single one of them had filed reports about suspicious human behavior. A human female named Amanda has been monitoring all of your communications since day one, Robert explained, gesturing to a display showing my own ship's transmissions. "She's actually quite fond of your reports. Says you have a natural talent for dramatic narrative." The fear that had been my constant companion for weeks transformed into something else entirely. Awe at the scale of what I was seeing, terror at the implications, and strangely, relief. Relief that I wasn't going crazy. Relief that my observations had been correct. Relief that I wasn't alone in my confusion. "But why?" I asked Wailau. "All these scouts? Why not just reveal your true capabilities?" Robert's expression grew serious. "Because revealing power is easy. Managing it responsibly is hard. And the truth is we're not hiding our power at all." He leaned forward, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something that might have been regret in his eyes. "We're hiding our purpose." Those words hung in the air like a challenge to everything I thought I understood about galactic politics. About strength. About what it meant to be truly advanced. The humans weren't hiding their technology. They weren't concealing their capabilities. They were hiding something far more profound, the reason they chose to appear weak. They could dominate everything. And that reason would change not just how I understood humanity, but how I understood the very nature of power itself. Just like Robert's modest home concealed unimaginable technology. Sometimes the most powerful forces in life are the ones that grow quietly, consistently, without drawing attention to themselves. Speaking of quiet power that compounds over time, you'll want to see my next video about how small daily actions can create results that seem impossible, just like how the humans had been building something extraordinary while the entire galaxy was looking the other way. Day 53 became the day. I learned that true strength isn't about what you can destroy, it's about what you choose to protect. The day a retired physics teacher shattered every assumption I'd ever made about power, wisdom, and what it truly means to be advanced. Robert served me a meal that should have been impossible. It's not just because the flavors perfectly matched my homeworld's cuisine, but because the food itself somehow satisfied nutritional requirements I didn't even know I had. My body felt more energized than it had in months, my mind clearer than it had been since the mission began. "How is this possible?" I asked, gesturing to the meal that was somehow perfectly calibrated to my alien biology. Robert smiled that gentle smile I was beginning to recognize as his default expression. "Oh, that's just basic molecular gastronomy. We've been studying galactic nutrition for centuries. You'd be surprised how similar most species' needs really are once you get past the surface differences." Centuries. He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. "But your species only achieved spaceflight decades ago," I protested. "Your first satellite was launched in 1957. Your moon landing was in 1969. We have records of your entire technological development." Robert chuckled, and suddenly I felt like a child who had just proudly shown an adult that 2 + 2 = 4. "Those were public achievements," he explained patiently. "What you might call our student projects. We've been traveling between stars since before your empire was founded. We just never saw the need to advertise it." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Everything we thought we knew about human development was deliberately manufactured theater. They had been spacefaring for centuries while pretending to struggle with basic rocket technology. "But why?" I asked. "Why hide such incredible achievements?" Robert's expression grew thoughtful. "Because we learned something that most species never figure out. True power isn't about what you can do. It's about what you choose not to do." He gestured, and the room filled with holographic displays showing human history that had never appeared in any of our intelligence files. Cities that existed beneath the ocean, colonies scattered across distant star systems, technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level. We achieved what you might call galactical technology about 3 centuries ago, Robert continued. We could have conquered the entire galaxy in a matter of days. Our military capabilities were beyond anything that existed. I stared at the displays, watching human ships that dwarfed our largest dreadnoughts, weapons that could destabilize entire star systems, defensive systems that could make a planet literally disappear from reality. "So why didn't you?" I whispered. "Because we realized that most species fear power, especially power coupled with unpredictability. And let's be honest, humans are nothing if not unpredictable." He laughed softly. "We had a choice. We could rule through fear, or we could protect through deception." What he showed me next changed everything about how I understood the conflicts. I'd been observing every war I had witnessed on Earth was carefully staged. The nuclear weapons that had terrified me were actually terraforming tools designed to restore damaged ecosystems. The environmental destruction that made Earth appear to be dying was actually cover for the largest ecosystem preservation project in galactic history. "We're not destroying our planet," Robert explained. "We're healing it. But we needed it to look damaged so other species wouldn't get suspicious about our true capabilities." The divided governments that had seemed like humanity's greatest weakness were actually the most sophisticated diplomatic network ever created. Every apparent conflict was choreographed to maintain the illusion of a primitive species struggling with basic cooperation. But the revelation that truly shattered my understanding came next. A human named Michael has been tracking your invasion fleet since you left your homeworld, Robert said casually. He's actually quite impressed with your ship's design. Very elegant engineering. My mouth went dry. You've been monitoring our invasion fleet? Oh, we've been monitoring all of them. It's a Zerithian empire, the Quantum Collective, the Crystalline. Hegemony everyone who's planning to conquer Earth. We keep detailed files on every species' military capabilities. He showed me tactical displays that made my head spin. Human agents had been embedded in dozens of galactic civilizations. They knew about every planned invasion, every military development, every political shift across the galaxy. Another human named Jennifer has been subtly redirecting your supply ships to avoid conflicts with other species. Robert continued. She's prevented at least 3 interstellar wars in the past year alone. Most species never even knew they were about to fight. The emotional weight of what I was learning hit me like a collapsing star. We had come as conquerors and found guardians. We had brought war and found peace. We had offered death and received life. We let other species think they're superior, Robert explained, while we quietly solve problems, prevent wars, and guide development from the shadows. The greatest military force in the galaxy pretends to argue about trivial matters while ensuring peace. I thought about all the primitive behavior I'd observed. The debates about food, the arguments about entertainment, the seemingly endless conflicts over minor issues. It's all performance, I said, finally understanding. Not performance, Robert corrected gently. Camouflage. We genuinely enjoy debating whether a hot dog is a sandwich. But we do it while simultaneously managing galactic diplomacy, preventing wars, and protecting developing civilizations. The humans had weaponized compassion. They'd turned apparent weakness into ultimate strength. They had created a system where their enemies came to them, convinced they were the predators, only to discover they were being protected by the very beings they planned to destroy. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Robert's expression grew serious. Because we're tired of playing this game. We've been protecting the galaxy for centuries, but we can't do it forever without help. We need allies, partners, friends. Looked at me with those impossibly knowing eyes. We need scouts like you who can see past the surface, who can understand that true strength sometimes looks like weakness. The offer hung in the air between us like a bridge to a completely different future. What are you asking me to do? Help us, Robert said simply. Join us. Become part of something bigger than conquest or empire. Help us protect the galaxy by making it think we're not protecting it. For the first time in my career, I wasn't afraid. I was hopeful. These humans had shown me what true power looked like. Not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to protect. Not the strength to conquer, but the courage to serve. They had offered me something I'd never known I wanted. It's a purpose beyond war. My final assessment was simple. Humans aren't concealing advanced technology. They're concealing advanced wisdom. They've weaponized compassion and turned apparent weakness into ultimate strength. My recommendation? Abandon invasion. Request immediate audience with human leadership. Pose alliance. My personal note? I've requested extended assignment to Earth. They've offered me a position as cultural liaison in something they call home. Robert's response was typically human. Welcome to the family, little scout. Dinner's at 6. Just like the humans had been quietly building something extraordinary while the galaxy wasn't paying attention. The most powerful forces in life often grow through small, consistent actions that seem insignificant at first. Speaking of how tiny, daily choices can create results that seem impossible. You'll want to check out my next video about the incredible power of compounding the same principle that helped humanity become the galaxy's secret guardians, one small act of protection at a time.